Well, hello everybody. Welcome again to episode of Psycho's Platters. I think I'm going to call this episode 177. It's going to be a response video to, let me see if I can get this right, Elvis and the Beatles in the 21st century. I watched a couple people's videos, and I'm going to give a shout out to the two that I saw, okay? Both fine videos, both fine channels. If you are not subscribed to either the King's Court or Mean Mr. Mayo, you know, go please do so. They are some of the best channels in regards to Elvis for King's Court and Mean Mr. Mayo for Beatles and solo related stuff. Excellent, excellent guys they both are. So I watched these two, and then I read some other things too. I'm going to try not to be long-winded, but I can't promise, because we're talking about two of the best music icons in music history. I want to throw out here a couple websites I'd like you guys to look at. You'll have to forgive me, the website articles are a little dated. Some of them range from 7 to 10 years ago, okay? I tried to get more current info, but I wasn't that successful at the time. And no offense, for once, I'm not going to trust Wikipedia in regards to some of the information that I wanted to look into. One of the websites that I actually really liked is elvisinfonet.com. That's all one word, okay? elvisinfonet.com, breaking down Presley and Beatlemania. Is really actually a very good article. Go take a look at that one. That one was actually posted in early '07 on that website. I want to go off and bring up some other things first before I get to that, though. Okay. Yes. All right. Sorry, guys. Look, I'm going to be 50 this year. I've brought this up a few times already. Okay. Being said that, I've collected, like I said, since I was 5, so let's put that in 1972, okay? I started collecting categorically. Believe it or not, I got on an Elvis kick. It was real weird how I got on the Elvis kick and why I ended up on the Elvis kick. I started in 1976. It was actually the summer of '76 on vacation, of all things. The Elvis bug bit me. What could I say? And 90% of what I heard, I thoroughly enjoyed. This 8 to 9-year-old boy back then enjoyed it immensely. And you know what? Sometimes when I listen to Elvis stuff, that's exactly the mental mind place it puts me in, and it makes me happy. Saying that, when a couple of years later I got into the Beatles. Now, I always liked the Beatles, but I'm talking about collecting the Beatles. I started when I was 12 years old. 1979. That's when I started collecting. Actually, it was around the mid to late summer, actually, because my record store that was 2 blocks away from me opened up, and I picked up all the. I'm not kidding you. I picked up a lot of Elvis and Beatles in that store over the years. And Skip, I miss Skip's store sometimes. So you know, for everybody's collecting purposes, well, okay, they went off and they said that Elvis is a gateway. If you think about it, Elvis is a gateway to music. Now, how do I go off and I say that? Well, because Sam Phillips obviously heard something in him, didn't he? He heard, and I'm just throwing this out there, that I am not the term that he went off and said is he wanted to find a white guy with a blackish voice, okay? Now, that's not trying to sound racist. I didn't come up with that. That was what Sam Phillips did. But I get it. I get it, okay? Because R&B was huge at the time in the 50s. Saying that, Elvis was a relic and an icon of the 50s, even though he obviously performed and continued to be in the public eye until his death in '77 and then some. Well, one of the notes that I went off and I mentioned, which was so true, and you can probably, most of you will probably agree with me on this, 50s music is not being heard very much anymore out there, unless you're like subscribing to, what is it, Sirius XM, I think, has a 50s channel. Oldies channels, which, God, around here are scarce. There isn't any. Oldies channels will pretty much ignore anything now from mid-60s and before. Okay? I remember, at least in the 90s, up where I came from near Chicagoland, that you still could hear 50s music, alright? So everything's kind of a generational shift, so to speak. I mean, Elvis had, 8 years up on the Beatles, alright? I mean, for major exposure, I'm saying. 56 was the thing that went to him. And by the way, I'm going to throw this out. Now, forgive me, this is not a current reflection of album sales in the United States of these groups that I'm going to tell you. But this is from the article of ElvisInfonet.com, Elvis versus Beatles versus Garth. Yeah, I'm going to throw this for a second, because this I thought was kind of weird. I did not realize this. They ended up having the tabulations, and at that time, in November of '07, that's when this article was placed, and as of when the charts were tabulated, okay? Beatles sold 170 million albums in America. Garth Brooks had 123 million albums. Garth Brooks. Alright, so he's second on the tier on this. Elvis comes in nipping at Garth's heels at 118.5 million. Now, for trivia's sake, guess who the fourth person was? It actually was a group. Led Zeppelin with 109.5 million. So that's your four people in the United States up until late 2007 for album sales. The thing is that, like everything else, personal tastes change. Climate music changes. Let me throw a couple more facts out here for you, too. This is from Elvis-history-blog.com. This was posted in late 2008. And it said, Elvis from 1956 to 77, Elvis put 134 sides. In other words, your 45s, okay? A, B sides, they were considered sides. He put 134 sides in the top/Hot 100 in Billboard. Heartbreak Hotel was the first, Way Down was the last. From 64 to 70, Beatles had 62 titles on the Hot 100. First being I Want to Hold Your Hand, January of 64. Long and Winding Road, July of 70. Elvis had 102 entries in the top 40, and the Beatles had 50. Remember, I did say that this article was late 2008, so that could also be slightly reflected differently. A few other things I want to bring up about this. I already mentioned about the 50s music. Let's talk about current product. Let's talk about current and unreleased product. Heck, I remember reading in books, and I remember listening to, what was the, guys help me out here, RCA Legendary Performer series. I think they made, what, 4 or 5 volumes? But what I'm getting at is this started in 73, 74, if I remember correctly. So while Elvis was alive, they started going through the vaults because they said part of the reason was that they wanted to put more product out. RCA wanted to put more product out, and Elvis, well, wasn't recording as much. And that's kind of the truth, too, because, well, look what happened. By 76, it was pulling teeth. It was pulling teeth to get him to do any product. Which is kind of sad, a state of things back then. So what I'm getting at is because they started using the unreleased product as early as 73, he dies, they keep finding more stuff in the vaults, they keep putting things out. Now, saying that, the last thing that I really kind of remember, well, actually there's 2 things that I remember that came out. Number 1, it was on one of those Elvis Greatest Hits. I've got it around somewhere. Was it not rubbernecking? No, or was it? It was the roustabout outtake from the movie. They actually found that, and of all places, it was in a basement. They found the tapes in a basement somewhere. I'm going, what? That and the what was it? Oh, jeez, the Linda Thompson tape from '74. The cassette that Linda and I think her brother Sam pressed play, and Elvis played in the living room of the Thompson residence. So, I mean, that's kind of cool, but, you know, except for maybe the live gigs that still aren't out, how much unreleased product is there? Did we really scrape the bottom of the barrel? That is not an insulting term, by the way, Elvis fans. It's not, because I'm going to bring up about Beatles, too, okay? I'm saying, though, is if you've got new product to put out, even if it's old product, that will keep that particular brand, that icon, in the public eye. It's just a genuine fact on that. It's simple. For example, another thing I wrote in here, Beatles is going to have the 50th anniversary of the Sgt. Pepper album coming out May 26th. It's caused a lot of furor, a lot of excitement. Even I will probably get the 2 CD edition, because I'm not going to pay ridiculous money for any more than that. Saying that, this year in August will be the 40th anniversary of Elvis's death. Does Graceland / RCA, Elvis Presley Enterprise, whatever, are they going to have a semi-big event? Do we finally have something? Honestly, I think there still is a handful of things out there in Elvis land that either haven't been claimed or haven't been discovered yet or whatever. But honest to God, at this point, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. It's interesting, I guess, what was it that they did, the symphonic orchestra? Yeah, that's nice. It's just, to me, that doesn't excite me. It'd be the same thing for the Beatles if they went and did No. With the Beatles, on the other hand, they had 3 anthologies. They ended up being back popular in the 90s again. That was when, you know, when they had the 3 still around. And that's another point, too. I think one of the standing points is as long as there's a Beatle still alive, obviously, once again, they will be in the public eye, and they'll go, oh yeah, he used to be in the Beatles. So the Beatles in the solo catalog, and the generations of fans keep going. You got 8 years difference, so basically a musical generation per se. But here's the thing. I also brought up in my notes that because the Beatles, you know, now that they've done the Sgt. Pepper thing, I'm taking assumptions now, okay? Assumption, and yeah, I know what happens when you assume, but bear with me on this. So, 2018, Deluxe White Album. 2019, Deluxe Abbey Road. 2020, Deluxe Let It Be. And I pray to God by then that they will have a legitimate DVD, Blu-ray, Let It Be movie, please. I mean, especially after what I heard, that they found so much video and audio footage that was previously stolen. Sorry, I cannot remember the source. I read it in Rolling Stone magazine. This happened a few years back. And it wasn't just the Beatles. They found other things. So, here's the thing. It's up to us as fans. It's up to us as collectors of both groups and all the other popular stuff to make sure that it doesn't die. Because as long as people don't buy the product, as long as people don't turn other people onto things, yeah, that's when things start withering on the vine. And truthfully, Elvis and the Beatles are in class amongst themselves, separately and together. John Lennon said, quote, "Before Elvis there was nothing. They even recognized it." Okay? And what I mean by that is that, yes, you had 50s R&B, and you had blues. But would it have gotten any further into the mainstream? I know, what is it? Okay, oh boy, I'm going to have some people probably rolling their eyes at me. I know I'm going on tangents here. Pat Boone, whatever. Pat Boone tried to sanitize R&B hits. In the 50s, Elvis still had that twinkle, didn't he? He had that spirit. Honestly, even though I'm an Elvis fan, 50s Elvis is my favorite. But obviously, 60s and 70s stuff, I think that, there are diamonds in the rough, and there's guaranteed hits. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm glad he was around that long. But it also makes me wonder, what if he actually was still alive, or at least lasted a lot longer? How do you think they would have been in the 80s? Elvis. You think Elvis would have done an interesting turn in the 80s? Do you think maybe, because I know that he loved gospel so much, do you think maybe he would have tried his hand on, gospel records? Would he have gone into a more country vein? Because maybe he would have seen in the 80s, would Garth Brooks have come around? Maybe he would have looked at Garth and go, huh, okay, and just start going into a country vein. I mean, I know he was kind of sort of set in his ways, but if it's one thing you've kind of realized through any of the catalog that he's done, 50s, 60s, or 70s, he could take an unknown song and he could take a cover song and he made it his own. Same thing for the Beatles and those R&B covers and the Motown stuff that they did in the early 60s periods. They made it their own. So I guess I know I'm being long-winded, but I'm praying that people will still be able to be, either reintroduced to Elvis or become new fans, along with, like I said, the Beatles. I do know young Elvis fans. I do. Now, what do I mean by young Elvis fans? Under 21. In fact, I have a regular one that comes into the store that I frequent, and he's 16. And he went off and he claimed he found him on his own. Nobody else told him. So, you know what? I don't think the flame will die for either of these bands. They may flicker a little bit from time to time, but I think, if anything, well, okay, Sinatra. Sinatra's an icon all himself, right? And I know Sinatra and Elvis are apples and oranges. Okay, you don't have to tell me. But Sinatra, he's an icon class. People of that day, and now looking back on Sinatra's catalog, I mean, let's face it, the man is revered. Elvis is revered. Give it another 10 years. I think you're going to see some interesting things happen. Give 10 more years for the Beatles, too. Because, truthfully, what they need to do is they need to remaster those 3 anthologies and put them out. And there is enough for a 4th. I don't care what anybody says. I know there is. But, honest to God, what I'm thinking, truthfully, is, yeah, I do unfortunately see a time, in a way, where the Beatles will actually get less in popularity, but I don't think that's going to happen, I bet you, at least till the 2030s. I have a feeling on that. And of course we know why, because the adapting music changes and things like that. But I think truthfully both of them, Elvis and the Beatles, will be on solid ground, at least to say the least. I mean, we're in 2017 right now. I'd say at least for the next 5 to 10 years, I don't really see a problem with this. After that, who knows? But as long as we keep, turning on friends, kids, grandkids, or at least give them the opportunity and availability to do that. And I think, hopefully, maybe some of the radio stations maybe will try as well to reintroduce the music of those two and similar artists of those periods, because we shouldn't really be forgetting the 50s music no matter what. Alright, I know I'm long-winded, guys, but you know what? I appreciate it. And once again, if you haven't seen it, go check out King's Court and Mean Mr. Mayo and hit their channels. And also, like I said, go check out the ElvisInfonet.com for the articles there. Elvis-history-blog.com. And there also was another interesting one. It was called The Verdict: Elvis versus the Beatles. No, I'm not going to read it. But it's Down to the Basement Unreleased.com, and that one was put out in the spring of 2012. So next video that I do, hopefully, guys, I hope so, made it to 400 subs, passed. We'll talk about that. Till then, guys, take care, God bless, and rock on, and I'll see you next time.